Hey bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my summer TBR. A TBR is a list of books that I plan to read. Although I do things a little differently here on my channel, I do my TBRs seasonally, and also I like to make my TBRs bigger than what I can actually read. I kind of look at my TBR more as like a list of books to choose from rather than like a list of books to check off. So today I'm actually going to be talking about 35 books. The main reason why I went with 35 this time, it's probably the biggest TBR that I've made so far, is because I have been really sucking at reading the books that I pull out of my TBR jar. And so at this point, there are 14 books after I added the 3 new ones from this month on my TBR jar list. And realistically, I just know that I'm not going to read more than I'd say 3 at the most off of that list. So I went ahead and made my total number bigger so I could put more books from outside of my TBR jar that I am interested in reading on my TBR. Before we get into my summer TBR, let's just touch base about how I did for my spring TBR. In the spring, I read a total of 17 books, which is not bad. But the number is a little bit inflated because I did read 3 novellas for the BookTube SFF Awards. If you didn't know, I'm one of the judges, and one of the categories I was judging were the novellas, or short works category. So that kind of helped to inflate my numbers a little bit, but it was a pretty decent reading season, especially considering how June is going so far, which is not well. One of my goals with my TBR is that I try to only read up to 3 books in a season outside of my list, because I am a bit of a mood reader and I do like to give myself a little bit of wiggle room. It's just really hard to predict sometimes what I want to read. So in the spring, I actually read 4 books that were not on my TBR, which is a little outside of what my goal is. And when I looked at these, I realized that all but one of them were advanced reader copies that I had gotten after I had made my TBR, so I didn't know that I was going to have these books. And so because of that, I'm kind of cutting myself a little bit of slack here. There was no way that I knew that I was going to get these, and so I couldn't have planned to have read them. Okay, next I like to talk about what I'm currently reading, because I do usually film these after the month has started. I am filming this a little later in the month than I usually do, but I have been having a terrible reading month for various reasons, and I haven't finished anything. I have DNF'd 1 book, and that was Forest of Souls by Lori M. Lee. I did have an advanced reader copy of this, and I read 25%. I'm not going to talk about why I DNF'd it in this video. That is a topic for other videos. But that is the only thing I have finished in the month of June. Other than that, I am in the middle of 4 books. My current audiobook is The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. That is the 3rd and final book in the First Law trilogy. I'm a little more than halfway through that. Fingers crossed I finish it before the end of the month. I'm also currently reading a memoir called Empire by Arkady Martine. It's right here behind me, and I'm about 30% through that. I would also like to finish that before the end of the month, but we'll see if that happens. That is actually a BookTube SFF pick, and I really need to finish reading it soon. The voting and the live show for the BookTube SFF Awards has been delayed a few times, and so that's the reason why I haven't finished it yet. And then the other 2 books that I'm currently reading are slow reads. They're both really big books that I'm reading slowly so that I can fit in other books as well at the same time. Many of you will be happy to hear that I have started The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Stormlight Archives. I decided to go ahead and start reading this book now, even though I hadn't planned on reading it soon, because there is a read-along happening for this series right now called Stormalong 2020, that's the hashtag. I'll link an announcement video or something down below if you're interested in checking it out, but they're reading 1 book every 2 months. I mean, they are really long books, but you know, at least I can read it over 2 months. And they're doing live shows every couple of weeks, something that I really want to participate in. The purpose of the read-along is to lead up to the release of the next book in the series, the 4th one that is coming out in the fall. And then the other book that I'm slowly reading is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This was definitely not something I had planned, but the official Wheel of Time TV show Twitter account is hosting a read-along of the series, and they're reading like 2 chapters a week. Granted, I'm a little bit behind their schedule right now, but I figured that was like a manageable pace for me to read along with other people, but still, you know, fit in other books. So those are the things that I am currently reading. Next, let's talk about my TBR Jar Picks. I do have a TBR jar. It's here behind me, and basically every season I pull out 3 new books. The idea is that I read one a month, but as I mentioned, I have been doing it terribly at this for the past few seasons. Last season I did read 1 book, this one, off of my TBR. Well, I say read loosely because I didn't like it and I DNF'd it. But that left me with 11 books from my TBR jar, and then I picked out 3 new ones. I have a video clip of that I'll be inserting in a minute. So that's how we got up to 14 books from my TBR jar. And I really would like to read more of these, but I don't think I'm gonna read more than 3 in a season. And now I will show you the video clip of me pulling out my 3 new additions to my TBR from my TBR jar. Hey guys, so I'm here to pull out 3 books from my TBR jar. I am very excited to see what these books are. I'm actually doing this a lot later than I typically do, just because the end of May and early June has been very difficult and different from how they usually are. Anyways, so I pulled out a black and white striped star, which means this is a very old addition to my TBR jar. Oh, but I'm very excited about the book that I picked out, and it's one that I own, which at the time that I made this star, I did not own this book, but I do own it now, so let me grab it. I don't know where it is though. So I just pulled out The Girl of Fire and Thorns by Rae Carson. If you guys have been around my channel a while, you know that I have been wanting to read this for a while, and I'm 95% sure that this series was on my list of series that I wanted to read in 2020, so very excited to have pulled this out. I think that I will definitely be reading this soon. I hate to say that because I don't want to be lying to myself or to you guys, but I am really excited about this one. I am a fan of Rae Carson. This is a YA fantasy, and all I really know about it is it's about a girl who is born with a jewel in her belly button, and that means something, like she's someone special, but I don't really know much more about it. I want to go into it fairly blind. I have been wanting to read this, so I'm super stoked that I just pulled it out of my TBR jar. I'm trying to mix them up really well. Let's see. Oh, I picked another old one. Oh, I pulled out 11/22/63, which I don't think I own. Is that by Stephen King? Yeah, that's a Stephen King book. I wanted to read this because I watched the TV show. There was a TV show, was it on Hulu? I think it was on Hulu. So this isn't a horror book. I think it's just science fiction. But from what I remember from the show, there is a man who goes back in time to when JFK was assassinated, and he tries to stop the assassination. I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but I am excited to read that at some point. All right, last one. Let's see. This is one of my newer ones. Oh, not sure how I feel about this. I got Memory Keeper's Daughter by Kim Edwards. I think I have this. Okay, took me a minute, but I found it. I do own a copy of this. I bought it at a library book sale that I went to for really cheap. And I bought it because it's a book that I had heard about when I was in graduate school. If you don't know, I went to graduate school. I got my master's in genetic counseling. And this is a book about someone with Down syndrome, sort of. It's about a nurse who adopts a baby with Down syndrome because the baby's parents didn't want him. It's definitely not the kind of book I typically read, but it is, you know, sort of related to my career field. And when I saw it at the library book sale, I just picked it up because I knew that at some point I had wanted to read this. Not sure when I'll get to this. It's not super high on the things that I want to read in the next few months, but I'm glad that it is officially on my TBR now. Alright guys, those are the 3 books that I pulled out of my TBR jar for the summer. Now back to the rest of my TBR. Okay, and that leads me to the 26 other books that I have on my TBR. I've been in a little bit of a reading slump in June, if you didn't get that vibe. And so I do think that this TBR is ambitious. I mean, they're always ambitious. That's a little bit on purpose. This is maybe a little more ambitious than it needs to be, considering that I've been in a reading slump, but I just am really wanting to read all of these books, and I had kind of already checked them out from the library, so I just kept them all on my TBR. Okay, so I sorted out the rest of my TBR into genres and age categories to try and keep this a little bit organized. I think I'm going to start with my largest category first, and that is, not surprisingly, adult fantasy. The first three I'll talk about are rollovers from my last TBR. They are BookTube SFF nominations that I'm not judging for, so they have been kind of lower priority for me, but I'm still interested in reading them, so I put them on this TBR. First, I have The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, and I gotta say, out of all of my TBR picks, this is definitely lower on the totem pole, so I might not end up getting to this. I just know that it's a bit of like a slow and atmospheric story, and trying to crawl my way out of a reading slump, I don't know if this is really going to be a good idea. So if I do read it, it'll probably be later in the season, but I'm not sure. I have read Erin Morgenstern's previous book, The Night Circus, and I have pretty lukewarm feelings about it. Next, I have Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and this one I am quite a bit more excited about. I just love this description of it. The Mayan god of death sends a young woman on a harrowing, life-changing journey in this dark fairy tale inspired by Mexican folklore. That just sounds really interesting. I love fairy tale retellings, especially dark fairy tales. And then there's the Mayan aspect to it that I just think is so different and just not something that I've read a lot about, and I've heard a lot about this author. So this one is definitely higher on my priorities than The Starless Sea. And then the last BookTube SFF carryover is 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. This one I was really excited about initially, and I'm still interested in it, but I do think it is, again, a bit of a slower character focused kind of story, and I'm just not really in the mood for it. I do think I'm more interested in picking this up than The Starless Sea, but I might not get to this one either. I don't know. If you guys really enjoyed The Starless Sea or this one, definitely let me know down in the comment section so that maybe I can kind of bump it up on my priority list. There's just so many other things that I'm really excited for and itching to get to, which is why this TBR is huge. Then I also have The Blood Mirror by Brent Weeks out from the library. Sorry, the lighting is so reflective. This is the fourth book in the Lightbringer series, and I have been kind of putting this off for a while now, and the longer I put it off, the less interested I am in continuing the series. So this is, again, not super high on my priorities, but I went ahead and checked it out from the library just in case I was in the mood for it. I am obviously already reading a couple of other very long fantasies right now, so I don't know about this one, but just in case the mood strikes, I went ahead and put it on my TBR. And then the last adult fantasy that I'm going to talk about today is one that I'm actually really excited for, and that is Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. This is the first book in a series. I'm blanking on the name of the series, but I've heard a lot of really good things about it. I think the last book just came out last year, and recently the ebook of this was on sale for $2 or something. So I went ahead and picked it up. I do think I'm going to be getting to this. I'm planning to get to this because I am planning to do a buddy read for this with Kayla from Crack Into a Good Book. I will, of course, link her channel down below. She reads a ton and a lot of SFF. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check out her channel. But yeah, I've heard really good things about this. I just bought it recently. So I'm still really excited about it, and I want to read it while I'm excited about it. So Kayla and I are shooting to read this soon. Okay, next let's talk about some adult sci-fi. I mentioned this in a previous video, but I picked up How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. Oh my gosh. This is a short story collection by N.K. Jemisin. I haven't read any of her books yet, but I really want to. And I picked this one up from my library on a whim. I thought it was appropriate considering some of the current events that are going on. And I've heard so much about her works, and I really want to give her a shot. I do still plan to read the Broken Earth trilogy, which is what I had originally planned to start with. But I also think it's not a terrible idea to start with a short story collection. And then my last adult sci-fi for this video is Abaddon's Gate by James S.A. Corey. This is the third book in the Expanse series. And this one I really want to get to. I'm hoping to start it in the next couple of weeks if I can finish up some of the other things that I'm reading. The second book in the series ended on kind of a crazy cliffhanger for me, and I have really enjoyed the series so far. So I really want to read this, and it's due back at the library kind of soon, so I need to read it. But this is pretty high on my priority list. All right, next let's talk about young adult fantasy. I have a couple of advanced reader copies for books coming out in the summer. One is Sisters of Sword and Song by Rebecca Ross. This is a YA fantasy that is a standalone, and it comes out in June. It might be out by the time you see this video because I'm just behind on life and I haven't even started reading this yet, which I had totally intended to. So this one is definitely happening and I really hope that I enjoy it. Another advanced reader copy that I have is for The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I talked about this in my anticipated releases. I also talked about Sisters of Sword and Song in that video, but this is a YA fantasy, seems like a dark fantasy that is inspired by the Salem witch trials and sounds really cool. And I cannot wait to read this and tell you what I think of it. I also am really excited about this next one that I checked out. I'm not sure if I'll get to it, but I really want to. That is The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. This series has been on my TBR forever, and I'm pretty sure I put it on the list of series that I wanted to read in 2020, or at least start in 2020. So I went ahead and put this on my TBR because 2020 is halfway over at this point, so if I'm gonna start it, I should try to start it soon. This one is kind of like a booktube oldie. Like, I feel like people were really talking about it and enjoying it when it first came out. Obviously, as happens with all books, as time goes on, less people are talking about it, but I just remember hearing really good things about it, and it sounds like something I would like. I know that there is a love triangle in this book, but the way that it's set up sounds really interesting. Basically, there's two love interests. One is a prince that the main character was betrothed to, but she ran away because she didn't want to marry him. And one is an assassin. And they both come after the girl after she runs away from the betrothal, and we meet both of them, or we see from both of their perspectives, but we don't know which is which until, like, I guess the end when it's revealed. So I just find that really interesting, and I hope I like this because I've been looking forward to it for a long time, and that's always the worst, when you have been looking forward to something for a long time and when you finally pick it up, it doesn't live up to your expectations. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Then I have one that's actually a middle grade fantasy, but it's one that's been on my list for a long time. I also believe it was on my 2020 series I want to start list. That's Fablehaven by Brandon Mull. Oh, sorry. I am planning to do this as a buddy read with my friend Graf. I know he's been itching to start the series for a long time, and I told him I would read it with him, but I hadn't actually, like, checked it out from the library or put it on my TBR or anything. So this one's for you, Graf. I checked it out of my library. I want to read it in the summer. It just seems like it would be a fun summer read, and I've been saying for a long time that I want to read more middle grade. I used to read more middle grade when I was younger, but also when I was in college, and I just haven't been picking it up for a long time, and I want to fix that. And this is one of the middle grade series that I have been excited to read. Okay, next let's talk about some YA sci-fi. I've got two YA sci-fi books, and these are both books that I really want to read. It's so hard. I want to read all of these books. I just don't have the time. I'm sure you guys, if you've been watching my videos recently, won't be surprised to see that I have Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. I mentioned in some of my other videos that I had this out from the library. I also own the audiobook. I actually plan to listen to it on audio, but I always like to have a physical or an ebook copy when I have an audiobook, just to kind of follow along or have something I can reference if I get confused. I read Scythe in the spring. It was one of the books that I read that was not on my TBR, but was also not an advanced reader copy that I had. But I just couldn't help myself. Angela from Literature Science Alliance was picking it up, and I decided to jump on that bandwagon, and I read it with her, which was a ton of fun. This is a YA science fiction dystopian that I'm sure you have heard about because the series is quite popular, but I am really excited to read this, and it is pretty high on my priority list. Okay, next I have This Vicious Cure by Emily Sue Veda. This is the third and final book in the This Mortal Coil series. It came out in January, and I've been wanting to read it since then. It took a little while for my library to get a copy in, but when I was putting together my summer TBR, I decided to check to see if they had it, and they did, so I'm very excited to have this out from my library. This is one that I feel like is pretty high on my priority list because it's a series that I have really been enjoying, and this is the last book in the series. So I want to know what's going to happen to these characters and how the story ends. This is a YA dystopian, or actually post-apocalyptic, that has one of the coolest virus outbreaks that I've ever read before. I like to describe it as a reverse zombie virus, and the author herself has a bit of a science background, so I really dig the combination of genetics and computer programming that is woven together in the series. And then the last genre of books to talk about are thrillers. I have one that's a YA thriller. I'll talk about that one first. I also mentioned this in a recent video, but I checked out Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is the story of a young black girl who goes to juvie because a white baby died in the care of her and her mother. And then after getting out of juvie, she goes to a group home, and it's about her dealing with stuff like after all of that has happened. In the synopsis, it says that she is pregnant and that the state is threatening to take away her baby. The synopsis ends with, in this gritty and haunting debut, Tiffany D. Jackson explores the gray areas in our understanding of justice, family, and truth, acknowledging the light and darkness alive in all of us. I've had this book on my one-day TBR for a long time, and now that I finally have it out from my library, I'm really hoping to get to it this summer. And I love reading thrillers in the summer. The other two thrillers I have are adult thrillers. I have Kilman Creek by Rachel Kane. This is the sequel to Stillhouse Lake, which I read last summer. I listened to it on audiobook and I really enjoyed the narrator. So I think I'm also going to try to listen to this one. I believe the audiobook is on Scribd, but if not, I have a physical copy that I can read. I mostly put this on my summer TBR because I read the first book in the series last summer and it just seemed like a fun thing to do, read one of these every summer, because there are more books in this series. It is a mystery thriller series, so while it contains some of the same main characters, you don't really have to read them super close together because they sort of stand alone. So if I don't get to this one this summer, it won't be the end of the world, but it is one that I'm interested in reading this summer. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This would be my third Riley Sager to read. I've really enjoyed the other two books by him that I've read, which were Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark, his newest release. I'm planning to read this with my friend Rachel from the Shades of Orange. I will link her channel below, but we read the two previous books that I've read of his together. So we would like to read this one together as well. It's been a fun experience by reading these books with her. I'm really excited about this one because it takes place at a summer camp, and I grew up going to a summer camp. It was one of my favorite things to do every summer, so I think that trope is really gonna work for me in this book. This one is pretty high on my priority list, so I'm really hoping that I get to it. Alright guys, that is my overly ambitious TBR. I mean, they're always really ambitious, but I feel like this one is even more so. But I'm really hoping that as I crawl my way out of this reading slump, that I'll be really excited about reading and just be able to read more than I have in June, because I have not been reading in June. Let me know if you have read any of these books and really enjoyed them, because then maybe I will bump them up my TBR a little bit, or let me know some of the books that you're planning to read this summer. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye.